Welcome to The O, Perspectives from Oxnard. My name is Denis O'Leary, and today our special guest is Arcenio Lopez from MICOP. Arcenio, welcome. Welcome to Oxnard.
Thank you, Denis.
And welcome to The O. First off, MICOP. What does MICOP stand for?
MICOP stands for Mixteco, Indigena Community Organizing Project, and we are a nonprofit here in Oxnard.
And now you say Mixteco and indigenous. First, the word Mixteco. What is Mixteco?
Well, Mixteco is the community from the state of Oaxaca and Guerrero and Puebla. And we add indigenous because we also have different other indigenous groups in Oxnard.
Long ago, I learned through some work with a person that I esteem very much, Rigobete Menchu, that unfortunately I grew up with the word Indian. And that's not an appropriate word.
For us, it's not an appropriate word, and actually we did an action here in Oxnard with the school district to work against this word because, you know, it's a discriminatory word for us, Indio in Spanish or Indian in English. For us, it's different. I mean, it's indigenous, or they can also call us by Mixteco or Zapotec.
And by the way, coming from the fact that Christopher Columbus thought he was in the wrong part of the world.
Maybe.
He thought he was in India.
In India, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately that stuck. And it stuck as a negative connotation as well. Well, first off, yourself, Arcenio, when did you come to Oxnard?
I came in 2003 because my whole family was immigrating since. Actually, my dad was and my mom was here since '82, and my aunts and other family members were living in Oxnard.
And what brought you to Oxnard, or what brought them to Oxnard?
Well, because of the work. I mean, the farm worker. Actually, we as indigenous people, we are kind of experts on agriculture, so that's kind of our work. And here in Ventura County is very agricultural area, so with strawberry, that is an industry where we work. And also, we go in other parts of California, such in the north, Monterey County, Santa Cruz County, or Gilroy, which is another city by the north.
And can you tell me what was your first impression of Oxnard? What did you see Oxnard as when you first arrived?
Well, when I first arrived, everyone was telling us about Oxnard. You know, I knew about Oxnard since I was a kid because my dad he went back to my pueblo in the town in Oaxaca. He always will mention about Oxnard. So I was imagining seeing a lot of people that is Anglo community, or English only speakers. So when I came here, I really got surprised that there's a lot big Latino community, Spanish speaker here.
Right.
And Oxnard, that really, makes me feel like I was in home. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you arrived in Oxnard, MICOP did not exist, did it?
It was.
It was. Tell me the beginnings of MICOP.
Well, MICOP was founded by a practitioner nurse in 2001.
Okay.
And I came in 2003. So MICOP was pretty small nonprofit with only, I would say, 4 to 5 promotoras, health promoters. They were getting some trainings and go to the community and bring some information to the community. So it was a pretty small organization in 2003. So I learned about this organization when I was in Oxnard Dual School because I was there for English language. So there was the director there, one of the board members was one of my classmates, and she mentioned about this organization, and I went to their meeting, and I really fell in love with them and their work that they do.
Now, question, you went to adult education to learn English. Did you have some English when you arrived?
No, not at all. Not at all. I only speak Spanish. I won't speak Spanish in my indigenous language, which is Mixteco.
Okay. And so Mixteco is a separate language as well?
Yeah, it's a separate language. A lot of people think that it's a dialect, but it's actually a language. And within the Mixteco language, we have many different dialects.
And I do not understand a word of Mixteco. I do speak Spanish. I myself have to admit that when I first heard the Mixteco language, I was expecting something similar to Portuguese and Spanish, where there are some similarities, other than modern words, technology words that have come maybe in the last 50 or 100 years. The languages are completely different.
It is a completely different, but like just what happens with a lot of language with two different communities get and they interact to each other, they start adapting some of the words from different language. That is what is happening with the Mixteco language in the Spanish, because we adapt a lot of terms in the Spanish. So when I speak Mixteco, my language, I use a lot of terms that is actually in Spanish.
Now, so when Cortez first arrived in the Americas, in Mexico, he would have heard the Mixteco language.
Actually, the Mixteco language, when he arrived in Mexico, that I know, he arrived to the Aztec civilization, so they speak Nahuatl.
Okay.
So the Mixtecos are more from Oaxaca and Puebla, which is the southwest of Mexico country. So the Mixteco word is actually a Nahuatl word. That means people of the cloud.
Oh, really?
Yes, and ourselves, in our own language, we call ourselves New S5i, which means people of the rain. So that's how we call ourselves. And we speak that Tu'un Sabi, means the word of the rain.
Interesting. Wow, I'm fascinated. Well, question. The Mixteco community in Ventura County and in Oxnard has grown quite a bit over the last few years. What are the numbers that you know of, that you estimate?
We estimate a little bit more than 20,000 because there was a study in 2008 about farm workers, and they were saying that 17,000 indigenous farm workers were in Ventura County. So we know that the Mixtecos are not only working in the agriculture on the fields with the strawberry or raspberry or the citrus, we also work on the landscaping and some of the restaurants, and we are in different parts.
Now, I was very proud when several high school and college students came to me and proposed a resolution for the Oxnard School District, but also later to other school districts in the area, on passing a resolution, no me llames Oaxaquita, don't call me
Little Oaxacan.
Little Oaxacan. And I was very proud that they came to me and to others to propose this initiative, because it was born from them. That resolution, what brought that on? Because is there discrimination here? Is there discrimination in Mexico?
We all know, I think, that with indigenous people, since we are minorities, I will say as a minority we have different social issues. One of the issues that we are being facing for so many years is discrimination, even in our own countries, like we were saying about the term Indio, or they think that we are ignorant. That's how the perception of a lot of people about indigenous people, not well-educated communities. So we have all those prejudices and all that kind of stereotypes in our own country. So it was a surprise for me when I came here and I was a farm worker in 2003, and I hear from other, like the Spanish-speaker communities calling us Oaxaquitas, but not in the nice way. They were calling us as a diminishing ourselves, as a way of discrimination. So I didn't really feel like that was appropriate. So I thought it was for us in our hands to educate the community about that term. So when I started getting involved with MICOP, I started talking with youth, high school youth, and that's how we started talking about them about this term. How do they feel when other people call them Oaxaquita?
Right.
At the beginning, there was some resistance saying, well, is their problem? It's not our problem. we should be feeling proud of our identity and ourselves. But the truth is that a lot of our youth, they don't really feel like they don't like to be self-identified as indigenous. They don't want to put themselves in that kind of situations. So it took us a little bit of work to finally encourage them and work with them so they can stand against that term.
And when the proposal first came out, I spoke to several adults who I know have fought for civil rights here in the United States, their entire lives. And I was a little surprised that many of them called me up and mentioned that they didn't know that this issue existed. They felt that if you were from Mexico, you were Mexican,
yeah,
and that there was somehow no discrimination. But in Mexico, you're saying it's pretty much inherent,
Yes.
unfortunately. And I can point out, if you don't mind, in the movies going back to the 50s and beyond, La India Maria was a comical rendition of an indigenous woman.
Exactly.
And have you, she was always smarter than everybody else, but she also made people laugh at the culture. Is that character considered negative in the Oaxacan community? Or do they laugh as well as everybody
They
else?
laugh as well.
Oh.
Because there are some communities that we are working super hard to adapt the Spanish language, and we don't want to admit ourselves that we are indigenous. As the rest of the community, there's
Right.
also in the Mixteco community, there's some classism issues.
Sure.
So there are some communities that believe they are better than other communities. So they laugh to those kind of TV shows. And also in Mexico, you will see a lot of these shows that is called telenovelas.
Right.
And you will see a lot of these people who dress like indigenous people as an Indian. They will be working on the back of the house in the kitchen. They will be the servants of the people who are different height or different skin color, or always indigenous people will be in the back in the kitchen being a servant.
As a teacher for many years, I've had students who I have believed probably spoke a different language other than Spanish, but they didn't want to admit it. I would think part of your job is to not just defend the indigenous community, the Mixteco community, but also to try to bring some pride to the same people.
Exactly. I think the pride or the identity is very important for our youth, for our children. Because if they really know about their background, if they really know about their identity, where their parents come from, if they feel proud of who they are, I'm pretty sure they're going to be doing better in school and with their educational goals. There is a lot of situations where our kids feel so embarrassed and they don't want to admit. They prefer to say, I'm from a different part of Mexico, but not from Oaxaca because of these discrimination issues. But when that happens, our youth, they don't have a high self-confidence.
Right.
Their self-esteem is low, and their socialization is they have problems.
And I have to say, children tease other children, no matter what. And in this case, it comes with their ancestry quite often. Every child can be teased, but unfortunately, this also passes on to adults as well, and in the workplace.
Exactly, and the farm worker, I was telling you, I was a farm worker in 2003, and that was one of the first words I hear, Oaxaquita. And I was speaking my language, Mixteco, to my other co-worker from Oaxaca, and there was a guy who only speaks Spanish from a different, state of Mexico, and he started laughing at us, and he said, like, ¿qué es ese dialecto? What is that dialect that you're speaking? And I said, it's not a dialect, it's actually a language,
Correct.
and it's called Mixteco. So there's people out there that they don't really know, they're not aware about the diversity of Mexico, where we have for about 62 different ethnic groups throughout the country. Just in Oaxaca, we have for at least 17 different ethnic groups, just in Oaxaca state.
Now, there's other languages and other indigenous people as well that are represented in the county. Could you name a couple?
I would say Zapotec is one, Nahuatl, El Mexicano, Purépecha, which is a community that we have here in Santa Paula, and Mixtecos, of course, Chinantecos, Huaves. Those are the ones that I can remember right now.
So there's many different diverse
Many
groups.
different diversity.
And when they come here, has it been difficult between the different indigenous groups to get together to protect each other, or do they stay separate as well?
Well, when you travel, when you go out from your state, it's a challenge to keep your values, your community values, such as keep together and support to each other. I think as a community, if we are from a specific community, we still are organized, but if we are coming from different communities, well, it's kind of, I see some difficulties on getting together and support to each other. But I think at the end, I think as immigrants communities, I think when it's a bigger issue, we come together and we support each other. I've been seeing those on some of the rallies and some of the events that we have done, such as the immigration rally. I mean, when there is biggest issue that affects all of us, we come together and support each other, and I think that is a pretty good thing to see in our community.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a pause right now. And when we come back, I want to ask more questions about MICOP and the community. My name is Denis O'Leary. I am interviewing today Arcenio Lopez from MICOP, and we are at the Downtown Soul Gallery and Handmade Boutique on C and 3rd Street in Oxnard. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the O. Today, my guest again is Arcenio Lopez from MICOP here in Oxnard. Arcenio, so MICOP, it started around 2001. What are the services that MICOP provides today to the community?
Dennis, we are very lucky to being able to be working with different agencies in Ventura County. We're being able to have the interpreter services that we train Mixteco Spanish, some of them Mixteco Spanish, English, trilingual, indigenous people. For interpretation, we have those services available. As well, we have classes for parents, and we also have an outreach program that is actually promotoras going in the fields and bringing information to our families. And we have this very interesting youth program, the Tequio Youth Program, that's actually right now they're working on this campaign that is called Fields to College, because there is some youth who are they are working as a farm worker and they are under 18 years old.
Right.
So we want them to know there is opportunity for them to come back in high school and be enrolled in high school. And also while educating our parents the importance of education, that they should be supporting the children and their youth to be in school and get an education, because we believe there is an opportunity here for all of us to get that kind of formal education. We also have our classes of literacy, which is the Spanish, Mixteco classes. We have parents or adults who don't know how to read and write in Spanish. We have to remember that our language is not a written language, it's more phonetic language, it's oral language. And so we have this problem there in our community, Oaxaca, that a lot of our families, they didn't have the opportunities to go and get a formal education. So we do have that program for them here. And we have a mental health project with the Behavioral Health Department, and it's a coalition that we work about learning about the perspective of the mental health for the indigenous communities in Ventura County and implementing programs that respond to those findings. There's women's group, domestic violence groups that women get together, and we talk about self-esteem, and we talk about the importance, their values as a women. And let me tell you, one of the exciting things that we've been working on in these last 3-4 months is a radio project. We applied to have a radio project, and hopefully we're gonna get it. So we have a community who is strongly working on fundraising to be able to make this project happen.
That would be beautiful, because I know a couple times I've been on the radio before. I've been with you on the radio before, and on issues that affect the community. Again, because the written language, number one, is not used that much. Number two, the target audience isn't necessarily literate in that written language. The radio would be a large step forward, I would think.
Exactly.
Now, your translations, and I must say I've been to a graduation ceremony where you have graduated certified translators. Can you tell me, what do they do?
Well, let me clarify that. There is not such as certification for an indigenous language interpreters.
Okay.
But there is a 40 hours interpreters training that is being kind of recommended for interpreters, any interpreters who's going to be in the medical field. So we were lucky to collaborate with CHIA, which is the California Health Interpreters Association here. Their manual was only in English to train interpreters from English to Spanish. So through this collaboration, they were able to translate all that whole manual into Spanish so they can give that training to our interpreters, which we feel very fortunate to be able to offer that to our community. And through the interpreter services, we're being able to have some contracts such as Oxnard School District, Rio School District, Winema School District, and some other services agencies here who have Mixteco clients, and they use our services, and we charge because we have to, pay our interpreters.
Sure. Now, and can I emphasize that in education and in many situations, a good translation is necessary. You don't necessarily want to have the 7-year-old daughter translating to the parents, but also the translators are capable of translating for medical issues and legal issues as well.
As well, yes, we haven't had that because the Ventura County Court, they have their own interpreter. It's actually one of our interpreters, so they use that interpreter. Most of our interpreters, they do medical interpretation, and through that training, they got all these topics of confidentiality and know how respond to that role of interpreters and be able to communicate the meaning of what's going on there. We have here situations sometimes where, you know, the providers use the little child to interpret cases like domestic violence. So I don't think it's...
Which is not a good situation for anybody.
Situation for anybody.
Now, okay, let me take the gloves off here, because we talked about how the Mixteco and the indigenous community quite often is looked down upon in Mexico. Within just the last few months, I have spoken to several very educated persons, very nice people, I must say, who are either Mexican or Mexican American. And when we discuss the indigenous community, the Mixteco community, I've been asked some of the same questions from different people. So can I, if you don't mind?
No.
Can a man marry more than one wife in the Mixteco culture?
Well, at least from where I am from, my towns, I haven't seen any man who has 2 women. I've been also hearing those type of cases or those type of comments. There might be some cases, but it's not a practice that we do in our culture.
Right. So,
let's put it that way.
And there are some cultures that are.
Exactly. But at least in our culture, probably there are cases, you know, and that a man has 2 women, you know, but it's not a practice that we have in our culture.
And can I mention that even in the United States, there are groups that do practice polygamy. So, you know, it's,
I mean, every culture, I mean, you will see those type of cases.
So, but it's not a common accepted norm in the culture.
No.
Okay. And then I've had some people get very upset that the indigenous community are accepting donations and community charity to the point that they believe that the indigenous community, again, is lazy, that they're basically trying to take from the community or the government, or is the Mixteco community here to take from the community, or are they giving as well?
Well, on my own opinion, Dennis, our community is hardworking families.
Right.
Right. They are doing jobs that nobody else wants to do. We are hardworking farm workers in the fields, in the strawberries industry, agriculture industry. I would say at least 70% of the farm workers are indigenous people. So obviously, you know, the minimum wage and all these problems that we see in our communities and the farm worker community, it's not enough to pay all these bills that you have to pay, right?
Right.
Even those professionals who has a degree and they have getting a good paycheck, let's put it that way, they have some difficulties on this economic situation. So let's imagine a farm worker who is doing no more than $15,000 a year.
Okay.
So we're struggling.
Now, another thing is that many families live together in the same house.
Exactly. So we have to do that. There are some negative comments.
Now, does that happen in Mexico as well?
No.
No. So traditionally, the family unit stays separate in one family per one house in Mexico.
Yes.
Now, here in Oxnard, unfortunately,
families, 2-3 families per room, not per house. I mean, one room is $500, $700. One apartment is more than $1,200. If you're getting a paycheck of $300, $250 per week. Imagine, and you have 2-3 kids, right?
Right.
So I just see these comments. I take it as, you know, always they're gonna blame the poor community about what is going on and all this. I mean, we're gonna go into how all this money is divided in the United States. You know, the poor are the ones who always we're gonna blame about these problems.
Now, recently, and I fell upon a case of a young Mixteco woman Rosalba Cruz Moran, who her court trial will be starting up in about a month's time. So I can't really get on that point, but one fact was apparent that this young lady, and she was 19 at the time, she gave birth to a child in a strawberry field, left the child. And the initial reaction from everybody in the community was that she didn't know that she had services. Many of the community, unfortunately, are undocumented. That's another issue for a completely another show. But what struck me was there have been reports that even in Mexico, unfortunately, many people in the indigenous communities do not have the health care that they should have, and of recent it's become almost an epidemic that women have given birth outside of hospitals because they're not allowed in hospitals. Can you elaborate? Is this something that's just happening now, or is this something that has continued with the Mexican government and now the American government?
On regards to Rosalba's case, I think we as an organization, our interest is that she has, access to her interpreter to her language,
right,
to her case. People are stipulating that she probably is guilty without. In the court system and the justice system, I think nobody's guilty until the proof is that.
Correct.
So our interest right now is to make sure she has interpreted, she has access to those services.
Right.
As anyone's.
And I'm interested in that she has representation as well.
Exactly.
Which, again, in this country and in Mexico, everybody is afforded. But healthcare in Mexico, in some of these regions, is there a hospital nearby, or do women and men need to fend for themselves when it comes to health issues?
I born in a house, and all my 7 brothers born in a house. My mom always she go to the doctor one visit to see that the baby is okay, and the last visit to see that the baby is in a good position to be born in house.
Right.
So, from the community where I am, which is a lot of the cases, for our communities right here, is that we come from these small communities where there is not that kind of services. In my town, I never had a clinic in my community.
Right.
So everything has to come from you expensive, and doctors are expensive. And so I will say that those cases that you have here about Oaxaca, specifically about women giving birth outside, that is negligence, because they don't allow those women to have access to those services when they are in the hospital, because, again, there are not interpreters services.
So even in Mexico,
might be some communication issues there,
right,
that the provider didn't understand exactly what the patient was saying. I'm assuming those kind of things is happening there. I think that Ventura County is one of the counties that really, where the tremendous work on making sure our community has, that access to their language, services in their language, which I don't think is happening a lot in Oaxaca. There you have to use your Spanish that you have. Sometimes you don't have Spanish, so you don't know how to communicate with the services, with the providers.
If I can, and we only have a couple minutes left, please, if somebody wants to contact you or contact MICOP, and by the way, we're doing this in English. I have spoken to you on radio, on television in Spanish.
Yes.
I have had you speak in Mixteco. Today we're doing in English because we're going to a different audience, which may include Latinos, but also English-only speaking persons, because we're part of the community. How can somebody contact MICOP if they want services, or they want to help, or if they have questions?
Or they want to know about our organization.
Sure.
We have a website, which is www.mixteco.org, or they can also go to Facebook, Mixteco Indigena Community Organizing Project. They can also call us to our office. The phone number there is 805-483-1166. Or they can also send me an email, Arcenio, Arcenio.Lopez@mixteco.org. I would like to invite the audience, if they can join us to our annual Indigenous Conference that we're hosting here in Oxnard College on April 25th. It's from 9 in the morning until 5 p.m. We have a various workshop talking about the indigenous communities, Mixteco and other indigenous communities around health, education, and women's philosophy, and also legal issues on interpretations for our communities. In August, we have our annual celebration fundraising event that is called A Night in Oaxaca. We also need support. In the past, we have been lucky to have participation from representatives from the city of Oxnard and representatives from healthcare agencies and other agencies. So it's going to be August 9, and actually we're celebrating the International Indigenous Day. So that's a celebration in August. And we're going to be giving at least 5 scholarships for our indigenous youth who are going to their higher education. We are encouraging them to go and have access to those services.
I thank you, and I thank your organization. Like any group of people, we want our youth to do better than we've done. And I appreciate that you've been a leader amongst many to give support to not just the Mixteco community, not just the indigenous community, but also Oxnard. With that,
I really want to appreciate this invitation, Denis, as always. Thank you so much for inviting me.
thank you. And again, this is the O. We are at the Downtown Seoul Gallery of Handmade and Handmade Boutique. I want to thank Paul, who is behind the camera, and also all our supporters with OMAC. And I look forward to talking to you again with another perspective in Oxnard.